York's very own muscle building coaches, Anthony Bevilacqua and Pete Kacharian, proudly present to you New York Muscle Radio.
What's up, guys? New York Muscle Radio special edition. This is Big Pete Kacharian, and if you're listening to this, we have a bonus podcast for you today where Anthony was on How to Do Your 20's podcast. Keep listening and you'll hear Anthony talk about how he got started on his path in fitness and how he turned it into a business and lifestyle. Stay tuned to listen to the full interview right after this. Pete Kacharian, New York Muscle Radio, and I'm out.
The How to Do Your 20's podcast. We're going to be talking about fitness. We're going to be talking about your health. And as always, we're going to be talking about some entrepreneurship. And I have Anthony on the show. Anthony, first off, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Travis, man, no problem, man. I'm happy to be here. I've listened to your podcast a couple times, and I'm honored, really.
So how did you get started down this path? How did you get started in the fitness industry?
Well, I guess it's like the typical story. You know, you pick up the magazine with Arnold Schwarzenegger on it, and, you know, kind of everything kind of comes happen from there, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Pretty much, I started when I was a kid. You know, I was a skinny kid growing up, and I hated being so skinny. Like, I was one of those kids who, I was like stick skinny, you know, and I used to wear the T-shirts under everything. Like, I would wear a T-shirt in the middle of the summer. I mean, I'm in New York, so summers aren't like your summers, but still, you know, in the middle of the summer, have a T-shirt on and then have another T-shirt over that because I was just so self-conscious of my arms. So I found the Arnold, obviously, and then one thing led to the next, and I started working out, and I always knew that I wanted to help people in my life. But I never wanted to deal with people in pain. I used to work with physical therapists before, and to see people in pain all the time, to do that for a living was just not for me. You know, I hate to see people in pain, even though you're helping them get better. It's just when people come in, they're miserable and they're like that. And I didn't want to be surrounded by that negativity. As kind of corny as that sounds, I just didn't want that in my life. So I knew I wanted to help people, but I knew I wanted to do it in a positive way. So that kind of transitioned me into personal training. I started at the bottom. I started as a trainer with no clients. You know, I remember, I'll never forget the first day I came home and I told my mom, and you know, growing up, I didn't have a lot as a kid. You know, my dad left, so kind of the typical story. You know, my dad left, had no money, you know, stuff like that. So I was working at a job at the time. I'm 30 years old. I'm going to be 30 this year, but I was like, you know, 13, 14 at the time. I was making $5.50 an hour. Right, so I'm making $5.50 an hour. I get this job as a personal trainer. Now I'm 18 at this point. So I was making a little more. I think I was making $7.50. So I come home and I tell my mom, like, Ma, I got this job as a personal trainer. I'm gonna make so much money. She's like, well, how much are you gonna make? I'm like, well, it's $30 every time I get a client, you know, for the hour. She's like, wow, that's good. I'm like, yeah, I have to just get my own clients. So it was a 100% commission job. She was so like disappointed, you know, because she didn't understand like how that works. She's like, just stick to your other job. I'm like, oh, it's like I was so disappointed. But I got into that. I worked my way up in the bottom with 0 clients. Before I knew it, I was completely full. Went to college for nutrition, got my degree in my bachelor's in science in nutrition, so I'm a nutritionist as well. And, you know, one thing led to the next. I took over the whole department, so I was running a staff of 20 to 25 trainers. And then a famous quote from Walt Disney, who's actually one of my heroes. If you ever heard his story, it's insane. But one of his quotes is, you may not realize it when it happens, but a kick in the teeth may be the best thing in the world for you. So I'm running this department with 15, 20 different trainers, and I start to branch out online. You know, I start to get into the whole podcast thing. I have a podcast, New York Muscle Radio, and start branching out into that, and the podcast starts picking up steam, and the gym caught wind that I was doing the podcast, and they didn't like that I wasn't 100% committed to them. So they let me go. And that was one of the hardest things in my life, but it was like Walt Disney said, when the kick in the teeth is the best thing for you. I picked myself up, started off. I have my own studio now. The podcast has grown so much from literally 0 downloads to way over 500,000 downloads. And I have my own personal training place, and now just building up an online business. Now I do online coaching with my co-host. We have a supplement line. We have fitness products coming out. So that's my story pretty much.
There's a lot there. Let's start from the kick in the teeth. So it kind of seemed like when you're telling, and I know this isn't how it actually was, but
I give you the short story.
Obviously, yeah. But let's talk about from the kick in the teeth, because that had to suck. You know, after that happened, how did you turn all that into success?
All right, so it's a long story. So in between that, so I'm running the department, with a staff of trainers. I got like 20 trainers under me. And it was a really, really grueling job. I had to work so many hours, and the gym just kept wanting me to put more and more hours in. So it was taking a toll. So it was at that point where I was like, I can't do this anymore, man. This is like becoming too much. But I have a wife, and we had just had my daughter at the time. My daughter's 3 now. So this was about a year and a half ago now. So we just had my daughter. I have a house, so I have responsibility. So it's not like I could just pick up and go. So this is where I love that quote so much, because if I would have never had made that move. It wasn't until they actually pushed me in the direction that I need to go that, when your back's against the wall and you're on the floor, the only thing you have left to do is get up. So then from there, of course, the first couple of days I was depressed about it, like, what the hell was I going to do? Because before they had fired me, there's a long story to it, but before they fired me, they made me sign a non-compete. So I lost all my clients. It was literally starting from scratch again. But you pick yourself up, you do what you got to do, you got to provide for your family, and you get it done.
So you're killing it with the podcast. What have you done to grow that podcast from literally 0 subscribers all the way up to what you've done?
So basically, I think my rationale behind the whole podcast, I think why it fits is, in the fitness industry especially, there's so much nonsense, so much bullshit out there, and so many people lie and they give such bad advice. So one of the things with the podcast is, straight to the point. We just tell it as it is, no fluff, we call it. And I'm just myself on it, I don't sugarcoat anything. I don't hide anything from the listeners. And I'll do anything for my podcast. If I think something's going to be good for the podcast, I'll do it. I did one of my blood work. So I had to go out and get my blood work done. And I did a whole panel. I had a doctor come on and read my blood work. No other podcast does that. So I just think I'm trying to be outside the box, because I would want to know this stuff. And every time I get a guest on my show, I'm always learning something. So if I'm learning something, I think other people are listening to it and doing it over time. And I genuinely enjoy it,
Yeah. Is there one episode for the listeners here that have never listened to an episode? Is there one episode that they should try out, jump into first?
Yeah, just don't listen to the first 10, because the quality is so horrible. The first podcast you ever put out. I'm sure if you listen to your first episode, you'll laugh about it. I would say any of them are good, man. I one that sticks out in particular to me, I don't know, man. Literally, I've had every facet of the fitness industry done. We had a chiropractor on. I've had literally everyone, people who've created fitness apps. I had Tony Horton on my podcast. That was a good one too. All the big names in the industry, Lane Norton, Mike Toucher. I had a powerlifting announcer come on, which was a really cool episode too. So if you're just into fitness, we cover it all.
Nice. And you were talking about how one of the big differences between you and other podcasts is you just are honest, very much no fluff, all that kind of stuff. What else in the advice separates you from other podcasts? There's a lot of obviously health and fitness podcasts out there. What more specifically, I guess, separates you?
I guess it's the way we deliver it. That's a tough question to answer. I guess it's more, I'm from New York. If you can't tell from my accent, people always make fun of that. The coffee, the pasta, every time the way we say things. So maybe it's my accent and the way I deliver it. I think that's what's unique. I think my message is also unique too, because a lot of people make fitness so complicated, and it's not complicated at all. It's actually very, very simple, but people overcomplicate things to sell it. And we don't pitch anything like that on the podcast. If it doesn't work for us, it's not going to work. It's not going to work for you. I've tried in my life, everything that I've done, whether it's business or whether it's fitness, I've literally tried everything to get there. And you have to do that, because you have to know what works and what doesn't. So I've experimented a lot in the fitness industry. So I just kind of give my take on everything. And I think because I've literally tried every diet, I've tried every workout routine. So I know what works and what doesn't. A lot of these people who just, intermittent fasting is the only thing you have to do because it worked for me. Yeah, but it might not work for someone else.
Right. So what does your diet currently look like?
Well, I believe in flexible dieting. So I don't know, are you familiar with flexible dieting?
I've heard the term, but maybe, I guess, explain it a little bit more.
So bottom line is, every food you eat has a certain breakdown of calories, protein, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals, all that cool stuff. Now, the cool thing with flexible dieting is there's no such thing as a healthy food versus unhealthy food. Your body only sees those calories, protein, carbs, fats, vitamins, minerals. It doesn't see food type. So if you had a slice of pizza right now, I don't know how good the California pizza is. You may miss that if you ever come to. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. If I ever move out to California, I'll probably miss the pizza. But if you had a slice of pizza right now, your body's going to say, oh my God, Travis had pizza, let me put in his love handles. It doesn't work like that. Like I said, your body only sees those numbers. So with flexible dieting, I'm able to diet literally year round and fit all those good foods into my diet. So I'm never feeling deprived. If I want ice cream, I can have it, fit it into my goals, and I could still get really lean and do a bodybuilding show by eating ice cream, pizza, all that stuff. Or if I want to gain weight, I could just have more of it. So it's all about the numbers, and it makes it so simple. And this is what's the beautiful thing about, I guess, our podcast is, because a lot of other diets out there say you have to eat, chicken and rice and chicken and broccoli or tilapia and asparagus in order to get lean. But you don't, and that's so not true. And that's why I guess the podcast really took off, because we debunked all that fluff that's out there.
Absolutely. And I guess also currently, what's your workout routine look like?
Well, right now, I'm competing in powerlifting right now, so my workout routine is definitely different than most. I'm squatting 3 times a week, I'm benching 3 times a week, I'm deadlifting twice a week. So this is what I'm doing now, because I'm trying to, take powerlifting to the next level in my life. I've competed nationally before, and I stepped up again this year, so I qualified again to do nationals, so I'm going to try to do that. And my goal is to do well at nationals, well enough to be able to compete at the Arnold Classic in powerlifting. So Arnold's obviously my idol. And he has a bodybuilding show every year in Ohio. And one of my goals as a kid was always, I want to compete at that show. I just never knew I was going to get there via powerlifting. So one of my lifetime goals would be to compete there. So hopefully that happens this year.
And you said you work with some clients. Do you still work with clients at this point?
Yeah, so I have my own personal training facility. And then I have some clients online as well.
And you said you don't like working with people that are in pain. Like, what is your ideal client look like? I mean, is it someone trying to gain muscle, strength, lose fat, or something else?
I actually like to work with women. I think that women actually work a lot harder than men. And I don't mean that in a bad way, but women can kind of take pain a little bit more than men. So you can kind of give women more of a more brutal routine, and they'll survive a lot more, whereas guys will complain. And women just seem like, all right, this is the plan, you got to follow it through, and they follow it through 100% to the T. It just seems to be that women are a little more dedicated than men. Not to say that guys aren't dedicated either, but I think that working with women is probably one of the highlights of my career. But one of the other things, too, we did with the podcast is we're starting to branch out, and we're making my podcast kind of like a network. So it's going to be New York Muscle Radio Network. And we recently started a sub-podcast, which is called the Bikini and Barbell Show. And this show is basically for women. It's going to be all for women. The whole podcast is going to be for women. And then eventually we're going to get that on its own feed. But just steps in the right direction. And I think that the women audience, they're the most steered wrong. If you look at any fitness magazine, you see all these, either you see women who are too bulky and they look like guys, or you see women with unattainable bodies, who've had surgeries and stuff like that. So I think that women are the most confused. So whenever when a woman comes to me, I'm always excited to work with them, because I could show them the way.
What are some of the biggest mistakes you see people making? Let's say not just women, but just in general, people, especially in their 20s, when it comes to fitness.
Following what everybody on Instagram does. I mean, that is for sure. I mean, social media is such a good thing. It's not a bad thing at all, but it has its negative points. If you see, we'll go with the girls, for example. If you see a woman doing a glute exercise on the floor and she's like kicking the air, and she says, I do 100 reps of this and that's what's going to get me my glutes. That is the biggest lie ever. Most of the time, those women just do that because they have a nice glutes and they want to show them off and they want more followers. That's why people post things online. So women think, okay, I have to do this in order to get glutes. When in reality, you have to be lifting like a man. You got to squat, deadlift, bench press. So I just think that, social media is good, but I think that it definitely steers people in the wrong direction.
Do you post a lot on Instagram?
I don't like Instagram, man. I really want to delete it. Yeah. I've been gone back and forth on that. I'm more active on Facebook. I do have Instagram, and we have one for the podcast, New York Muscle Radio. But I don't like Instagram for that reason, because I think people just... And another thing that people forget is Instagram is a snapshot of time. It doesn't tell the whole story. So even with myself, if I post something up, let's say I post a video of me squatting 500 pounds, which I actually did on my Instagram. I'm at AB Fitness if anyone wants to follow me, but I dressed up in Captain America gear because I was Captain America for my daughter for Halloween, and I squatted 500 pounds for a couple reps on the video. We made a funny skit out of it. But if someone was to watch that and would be like, oh wow, this guy's really strong, he whatever, you get the wrong kind of impression. But it took me a while to get up to squatting 500 pounds. It's not like I just randomly stepped up to the bar and did it,
Yeah. And I think that's kind of one of the issues with social media in general is you always see people at their best. No one's ever posting like, hey, I'm a little hungover and tired. I'm going to take a nap. It's like, no, it's like, oh, look at how great of a meal I had, or look at how much I can squat or whatever. And it's very easy. Like, I'll just tell a quick story and we'll bring it back around. But I was living in Buenos Aires for a while, which is pretty dope. And I was,
yeah, man, you lived a lot. You lived in California. I mean, you live in California, but Chicago, now over there.
Oh, I've lived in Colombia and Brazil and Rio. I lived in Buenos Aires, Vegas for a little while.
Wow, nice. When you talk about Brazil, you want to talk about girls with fake asses.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, can I curse?
You know, since we're going there, like, I've seen more girls deadlift in Rio than I have guys the entire time I've lived in the United States.
That's hilarious.
Deadlifting. It's like, that's the thing they do. So but yeah, I mean, just to bring it back to what I was saying, it's like, I've done some pretty cool stuff, but every time I'd go on Facebook, even when I'm living abroad, I'm like, I always feel worse about myself afterwards.
Exactly.
I'm like, man, what am I doing? You know?
That's why I want to delete Instagram. Like, I can't. Like, I'm at the point where I can't almost, because I get so much interaction from people. And I love when I get a message from someone who listened to something that I've done, because it's such like the biggest compliment. I mean, you know, you're a podcast host, so you know. But so it's almost like I can't get rid of it. But man, I'm going to delete the app off my phone. I don't know. I got to do something. I wish I could just get the notifications, you know? Because, again, sometimes, like you just said, you know, you look at it and you're like, oh, man, you know, you're in a beautiful place like Brazil, and you're looking online, you see one of your friends post something stupid, and you're like, oh, man, I wish, you know? It's so bad. Yeah. It's so bad. Yeah,
definitely agree. We'll bring it back to you and entrepreneurship here. So we talked a little bit about the podcast, but I still want to dig in a little bit deeper on how you were able to make it so successful. Part of it is just great quality content. Did you do a lot of marketing for it? Did you
not $1
do anything special?
Not $1, not $1, man. Not $1 in advertising, not $1 in it. Literally what it took, and I wish I had like a secret answer I could tell you that it would be like mind blowing. Literally, just time and investing the time back into it. Just keep pumping out content, you know, whether it's, and now we're starting to have all different facets of it. So we started up a YouTube channel, so we're working on that, and every day we post up a little clip, like under 5-minute clip, you know, whether some type of fitness tip. You can go to newyorkmuscleradio.com/video and you can find it there. But again, it's just all about putting the content out and being regular. I think that a lot of people like regular content. So we usually have a podcast twice a week, but because of the new show, we're pumping out 3 a week, and just the consistency and your message, and it just happens very slowly. And, you know, sometimes, like, when I talk to you about it, I'm like, oh, wow, I did come a long way. But when, like, sitting here before you, I'm like, what can I do to grow this more? What can I do to grow this more? You know, what can I do to get to 2 million listeners? So it's almost like you just have to just keep going and one foot in front of the other, you know? There's no real secret at all. It was just literally hard work over time. And I hate to say that, because it's like everyone's like, oh, yeah. But it's so true, man. It's so true.
Have you gone on a lot of other podcasts and promoted it that way? Actually,
to be honest, I've only been on a handful, really.
Really?
Just putting out my own content time after time, twice a week, consistently, over time, and just trying to be unique with my message. I think that's what really helps.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's great, because I mean, I haven't done a lot to market this podcast either. My podcast, I don't think, is at the same level as yours, though, to be quite blunt. But it is interesting how it organically just grows. And, you know, I kind of thought, eventually I'll do some more serious marketing on it, but I really haven't done much. Yeah.
To be honest, I don't even know how I would market. I mean, I post up things on social media, but like, I don't even know where I would go to market. I mean, there's all these services that you can hire, but who knows if it's actually true and what they're going to do and what they're not going to do. So right. I believe if you put out good content, it'll build itself. You know, you'll start to build that loyal following. And all you need is that a couple of people who just listen to your message. And like I said, you know, over the year and a half that I've been doing the podcast, it's more, I get those messages from people, and I'm like, wow, this is why I'm doing this, you know. And when you get those messages that people say, you know, you transformed my life because of you. I was miserable before. I heard your advice. I took your advice, and now everything is great. And those messages just keep you going, and you're like, all right, this is why I'm doing this. And I think, you know, going back to Walt Disney, I keep mentioning him, but if I recommend one book, you should definitely read his book, man. It's a long book, but it's so motivating how he failed so much, but he built I mean, everybody knows Walt Disney, you know, so I try to, like, not emulate Walt Disney, because that's not going to happen, but You never know, right? But, you just try to just keep going. Walt Disney, one of the things is every time he would fail, he would just keep going and just focus on his vision. And my vision is to get out there, get rid of all the fluff that's out there in this industry and really show people that it's easy to get in shape. It's not as hard as people make it. And I think when you're genuine with your message, people listen, and that's how people just tell other people.
What was I think there's probably a few different books on Walt Disney. What's the title of the book that you're specifically?
So I read two actually. One was better than the other. The one that I think most of the listeners on this podcast like, since I've listened to it before, is How to Be Like. Oh, I'll give you the exact title. I'm just pulling it up right now. I think it's called How to Be Walt Disney, or How to Be Like Walt Disney, if it works. Yeah, How to Be Like Walt by Pat Williams. It's a great book because they give you like the synopsis of his life in the portions of it, but they also explain like why. One of the things with Walt Disney is he pluses everything. They call it a plus. So everything that he did went that extra step. It didn't matter how much money it took to get there. But no matter how much everyone told him no, he just said, yes, I have to do this because I have to. He'd always put out quality over quantity. And that's a really good book, man. It was so motivational. I was surprised when I read it because I've been to Disney before, and my wife's like a Disney-holic, and I was never like into it. It wasn't until I started, I was like, you know what, I go to this place all the time, I might as well read his story. I read his story, and I was like hooked. I couldn't believe it. I still can't believe it that I'm like obsessed with Walt Disney, Because the guy built such a huge, monumental thing, and it's like, well, why can't I? I'm next.
Absolutely. So I want to go back to your podcast, and you've had some really cool guests on. How have you been able to get such high quality guests?
Just reaching out to them on Facebook. Sometimes they have a website. Depends who you're trying to reach, So I had on Tony Horton. How I got in touch with Tony Horton was I had another guy on my podcast who used to be into fitness but had like his own podcast similar to yours. His Create Your Own Life podcast, and he had Tony Horton on his podcast. So after the podcast, I'm a pretty friendly guy. I get to know everyone. I mean, you've chatted before this, and, I'm sure we'll stay in touch after this. But, I kind of asked him, I said, how'd you get Tony on? He just gave me his contact. So it's all about who you know and always staying in touch with people and being nice and genuine to people. And, you may have someone on your podcast that I might want to get on, so I may reach out to you and vice versa. So it's all about networking too.
Yeah, and the part of the reason I wanted to bring that up is for the listeners, just realizing it's not as hard as I think most people would think. Like, I even still having a podcast, I'm sure in some ways you're the same way. Like, I get nervous about reaching out to people, and then I'm surprised when they respond and they say, "Hell yeah, I'd love to come on this show." I'm sure that still happens to you.
Yeah, you know what it is? I think I'm at the point in my life, and this happens later in your 20s, when you have responsibility and you're a real adult, quote unquote. You just start not to give a Can I curse?
Right. Yeah, you can curse. Go for it.
You just don't give a fuck anymore. You know what I mean? Like, you know what? What's worse comes to worse? They're not going to come on. Big deal, So you reach out and you just go for it. What's the worst that can happen? You never know. They may say yes.
Yeah, I've actually I sent emails to two different people. I don't know if you ever listened to the Tim Ferriss podcast.
Oh, yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I sent emails to two different people on the Tim Ferriss podcast, kind of expecting that they're not going to respond, but I'm like, whatever, who cares? What's the worst case scenario? They don't respond. And they both said yes. And I was like blown away that they, come on. And it's surprising. It always surprises me when I reach out to these people that I think, yeah, they're probably not going to want to come on. And then they say, hell yeah, I'd love to come on. So
it's funny because like a lot of the times I think that just like me and you, we're talking about this and we were talking about social media, how social media is like, you kind of feel bad about it. It's almost like we put these people on a pedestal when meanwhile they're just like us. So that, they'd be honored to come on your podcast because, you get your message out there faster. Your audience then, comes to my show, listens to likes what I have to say, stays with me, and vice versa, because I'm going to tell my audience I was on here. So again, it's all about who you know. And like I said, I think if you build a genuine message around yourself and you try not to be fake and just be who you are, people see that. And, you like you said, you make friends. Like I'm hoping one day that me and you can actually meet up and work out at Gold's Gym in Venice, California. That'd be great.
I would love that. Anytime, man. Definitely. So let's bring it back to some entrepreneurship. And it's scary. I mean, it's scary to start off your own type of business, and you've started many different businesses here. Let's bring it back to the early days. What was like the first dollar you made that wasn't a company paying you, and how did that happen?
All right, so I totally missed the whole story of my life. I've done a lot. Like I guess I'm the type of person that never gives up because I'm always trying something new. So in between getting fired from the gym and starting my own place, I actually had another company. It was a meal prep service. So basically I would prepare people's food for the week, because one of the things when you're a trainer is people have the hardest to adhere to nutrition, because nutrition's everything. 70% of your results come from your eating. So if you're eating the same things day in and day out, you're going to get bored, you end up cheating, you binge, and then you end up gaining weight, and no matter how hard you try, it's a cycle that people go through. We actually did a podcast on that. It's called a diet cycle, but that's neither here nor there. But so I figured I'd cut out the middleman and I'd just make people's food for the week. So I had another partner with that, and we actually started the first week in my house. We had like 50 orders, right? So it was like nothing. So we were done in like 2 hours. It was great. So we were so excited. We sat down, we ate, we had a beer, we cheered. The next week, we promoted it on social media, like nothing sponsored posts or anything like that. We just like, shared it to our friends and family, whatever. We had like 350 meals. It was like an 18-hour day in my house, dude. It was horrible. It was a horrible day. But ever since then, so the business grew. We had to rent a kitchen. It was like a whole story. Dealing with food is not easy. By far, I learned a lot in that experience. So we were wholesaling to gyms. So now after your workout, you can come and get one of the meals. It's a fresh meal. It was all natural foods, whatever. So we start doing that. The business starts growing. We start getting all these different wholesale accounts. And we got in trouble with the health department because so in New York, the way it works is if you wholesale to someone, you have to have a USDA permit. We had all the New York State permits. So by a technicality, they forced us to close down. And we felt at that point that it wasn't worth it to reopen. But neither here nor there, it takes those type of events. That was the first money I made outside of the gym. And then it took that. So once I failed with that, I just said, I'm going 100% with the podcast. Because in between that, the podcast started to make money because I started to get more online clients. And then once I finished the food business, once we got like the final letter from them, the city that said, you can't do this anymore, I went full blown with the podcast, and I immediately took the more money that I invested. And again, at this point now, I'm 100% on my own. So I was like barely making the bills, and I invested every penny I had left into supplements. So, and here we are today. So it's kind of always, I'm a lot better, more comfortable now than I was then, but you have to kind of take these chances in order to see if you can succeed, And I think you don't bite off more than you can chew, obviously.
Absolutely. The supplement you said you invested your money into, was that the caffeine?
Yeah. So I invented a product called Caffeine. So basically what it is, it's an instant coffee. So everybody has coffee. Coffee is one of the most consumed beverages. I think the average person consumes 3 cups of coffee a day. And again, the average person has a hard time getting in protein. Protein is one of those things that people just don't eat. Our societies, everything is carbs and fat. So I said, what if I put the two together? The problem is you can't mix whey protein and coffee. It clumps. So I contacted a manufacturer, and I told him my idea, and I told him that I wanted instant coffee that when you mix it, it has 10 grams of protein in it. And it took 8 months to establish it and a lot of money in establishing the process. But we figured it out, and that's where Caffeine was born, and that's at buyproteincoffee.com. You can find out more about that. But again, in between this, the podcast is growing, so I'm getting more money from that. I opened my own business, my own personal training facility, so that's running. So I'm trying to run 3 things simultaneously, and now that the Caffeine's set up, the personal training studio is all set up, and I'm 100% going with the podcast. Now we started the supplement line, and it's going to be, everything is kind of through the podcast at this point. So my goal is to transition away from the personal training. I mean, I don't know 100% away because I love it, and I love training people online, but I want to build a business bigger than me. So I know that personal training is a one-on-one thing, and you can only do so much in a day. So I need something bigger than me, and I want to leave my mark on the world. So that's why I know I have to keep investing back into the podcast and into the supplements, because that's just going to be something bigger than me.
Absolutely. I want to talk more about caffeine, because that products in general are something that are very interesting to me. What kind of protein? I don't know if this is like a proprietary thing. If it is, we don't have to say. But like, what kind of protein?
I can talk about it. Yeah. So if you use a whey concentrate or even a whey isolate, it'll clump. I'm sorry if you hear my dogs barking in the background. So yeah, they'll clump because it's milk, so it's milk curdles when it's heated. So what we had to do was we basically had how can I explain this? You basically have to keep blending the powder down to a finer grade. So it's almost like, the best way I could compare it to is like a whey protein hydrolyzed. A hydrolyzed whey protein. That's like the best way I can describe it. But basically you just keep fine grounding down the powder until it mixes easily. So it's instant. It's cool. I wish I could show you on the podcast, but literally just take it, pour it in, add hot water, and no clumps, stir it, and it's done. It's crazy. Wow. I've actually, every time I go to a party, I bring some with me, and I show it off to everybody at the table because I can take the littlest amount of water and it'll make coffee. And everybody's always blown away because one time I did it in a cup. It was like a small little cup, and I added the powder and I just mixed it, and it smells. It just aromatizes so fast, and it starts to smell like strong coffee. So it's funny. It's like my party trick.
And where do most of the sales come from for that? Is it all pretty much through the podcast or friends, some friends and family, or do you have
I have my own
source?
website set up. For some reason, I don't know why, everyone follows me on Facebook, so I usually post things on my Facebook and I get sales through there. But yeah, mostly through the podcast. I mean, we do commercials on the podcast, so I do stuff like that on there. I tried to get in on Amazon, but Amazon, of course, there was a timing. Of course, as soon as that I get the product to my house, Amazon changes their guidelines on putting products on there. So I can't, every time I try to get on Amazon, they deny me for whatever reason. I keep contacting them, but whatever, neither here nor there. It's all through the website and just basically through social media. Again, no paid advertisements, nothing like that. Only because I don't know how to do it and I don't want to waste money. So it's the only reason why.
Should talk to me if you're interested later, because I have actually a podcast about this exact thing and a YouTube channel where I talk about paid advertising is my bread and butter. I love AdWords. Yeah, AdWords and Facebook ads are my shit. 100%.
Dude, that shit confuses the hell out of me. I tried, I spent a little bit of money trying personal training when I first had to do it on my own. I tried, and I was like, this is fucking confusing, man.
It is. Well, especially something like personal training. It's very, very competitive. But we can talk about that more later. But another actually tip or idea for you is, I know Amazon closed down the whole FBA thing leading up to the holidays. They might have reopened it now. I don't know if it's worth trying again.
This was before the holidays. Yeah, I tried 3 times. They keep telling me they need more receipts. Every time they ask me for something, I give it to them, and it's just always something else. And then they just say, "Oh, you're denied," and they don't tell me why. I don't know. It's just Amazon. Like I said, so many people are putting shit on Amazon that they just changed it. But we're recently on the podcast, we're coming out with straps, lifting straps. They're really, really cool straps. I don't know if you ever used lifting straps before, but I hate those long ones, those long ropey ones, because they take forever to tie on. These literally just hook underneath in one wrap and they're on. So I'm super excited for them to come out. They should be here by the end of the month, so I can't wait to promote that. But I want to get that on Amazon because obviously Amazon's the place to be. You go out on garbage night and look at how many people have Amazon boxes outside their house,
Oh, absolutely.
So you got to be on Amazon.
I'm working on a new product right now, and as much as I'm 100% gonna have my own website, but Amazon and a lot of my friends are actually selling stuff almost exclusively on Amazon. My current business is mostly our own website with a little bit of Amazon, but Amazon's the future for sure.
Yeah. They're gonna have drones delivering the stuff to your house. I mean, it's crazy. You can literally. I have that Alexa, the Echo, whatever. I needed a shredder the other day because my shredder broke. So I'm like, Alexa, order me a shredder. And she just literally, okay, this is your choices. And I ordered it right from there. I didn't even have to go online.
Wow.
Yeah, it's insane. And she asked me which credit card I wanted to use and everything. So I was like, yeah, use that. And it came to my house 2 days. Come on, man. You don't have to leave your house.
Yeah. Amazon, Facebook, and Google are going to be the owners of the world pretty soon.
Yeah. It's scary almost.
What kind of plans do you have for 2017? I mean, are you mostly trying to promote the podcast at this point, products, or a little bit of everything?
Well, I would say my goal for 2017 is I want to get to around 2 million downloads total for the New York Muscle Radio Network. So we launched the new podcast, the Bikini and Barbell Show for Women. I want to get that rolling and then put it on its own feed. So that's like a self-growing podcast also. I have a new co-host that I'm bringing on that we brought on that. And she's great. So I want her to eventually be the host, kind of phase myself out of that. Come on here and there because obviously I love it. So I'm going to go on. But then start another podcast, add that onto the network, which is going to be more of a strength one. So because I want New York Muscle Radio Network to be something way bigger than me. I want to be the fitness go-to for the average person, because everyone, like I said, fitness can be so confusing for people, and people make this way complicated than what it needs to be. And I want to be the voice of fitness for people. I recently went on vacation with my wife and my daughter. We went to Disney. Go figure. And, I'm looking around at all these people, and I don't fat sham anyone. I'm a personal trainer, but as soon as I'm out of the gym, I don't take my trainer hat off, because you learn that very early on. You can't be a trainer everywhere because it's horrible. But, I'm out and I just look at people's lifestyles, and, it's so funny because you can look at the people who actually exercise a little bit and they try to do good and they're still doing bad just by their food choices, because just most people don't know. Because, like I said, people make it seem to be more complicated than what it is. So I want to be that voice for people. I want people to, when they think of fitness and nutrition, they think of Anthony Bevilacqua and New York Muscle Radio Network. So that's my goal for 2017, just to kind of build up that network, make it strong, launch the supplement line, the full supplement line, and start to do good and kind of transition myself away from in-person training. Even though, like I said, I probably won't fully step away from it. I want my income to come solely from the network.
Absolutely. And what about for 2016? Was there any big, and I'll give you a second, I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but any big lessons learned?
Man, I got to think now how many there were. There's always a lesson learned, man. Every day there's always something that comes up. 2016. So losing the business was definitely one of them. But again, we lost it on a technicality. Being fired from my job was huge, but that was in 2015. That was like late 2015. That was like November. So it was almost 2016. So it was building up a business in 2016. So many lessons I learned, but I think one of the things is never quitting. It's so funny. A lot of people, there's a quote, I'm going to butcher it because I don't remember it off my head, but there's so many people that work 80 hours a week to avoid the 9 to 5. And it's so true. When you step away from a job and you become an entrepreneur, I'm working 24 hours. Like, I got up this morning at 6 o'clock and I haven't sat down. This is the first time I'm sitting down all day, and it's 10 o'clock and I got my own training in. I have a family. I spend time with them. So, this is just, that's how it goes when you're an entrepreneur. You just keep going, and I think you just keep plowing ahead and don't look back. It's okay to look back at what you've accomplished, but never be satisfied with that, and just keep pushing for more and more and leave your mark on the world, because, everyone has a unique fingerprint, and you have to get that fingerprint out there in the world, because if you don't, no one's going to know your story. And I just don't want to be an average Joe. So I think that's what drives me every day, to get up when my alarm clock goes off at 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock. I'm like, all right, it's time to do work.
So this podcast has been full of a bunch of wise advice, and I hate to ask for more, but I have to.
Nah, man, we can keep going. Let's go another hour, man. I'm good.
Yeah.
I had caffeine. I'm good to go.
Okay. One of the big questions I love to ask, especially, it sounds like you're about to turn 30 soon, right?
Oh, damn, man, don't remind me.
I don't think it's that. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know. It's so funny. As a kid, you look, I can't wait till I'm 21. And then you turn 21, and you're like, all right, I can't wait till I'm 25. And you're 25, and you're like, fuck, I don't want to get old anymore. And then I was talking to someone the other day, and I'm like, oh, man, I'm going to be 30. And then they were like, yeah, in 10 years, you'll be 40. I'm like, shit. 40. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just like, you never think, and me, I'm going to get there, but time gets us all, as the saying goes. So, so what was the question? Any advice for someone in their 20s?
Well, yeah, so exactly. Any advice for people in their 20s? Now that you're, about to turn 30, you spent a lot of time in your 20s, obviously. You've learned a lot. What kind of advice would you have?
I would say to definitely take it slow and take risks in your 20s, because you can. The 20s is when you can, especially before you have a family, before you settle down and get married. Take risks. At one point, so I'm going to back up in my story again. So I became a trainer. As soon as I turned 18, I got my certification. I went to the gym on my birthday, got hired, became a trainer. So within 6 months of being a trainer and going through all the initial process, learning how to sell the whole bit, I had saved up a lot of money, because I was a kid. I worked like crazy. I was a workaholic. Like I said, I was making $5.50 an hour, but I saved all my, I saved everything. I didn't spend any money. I'm simple. I was into fitness, so it doesn't cost much to work out. So I saved all my money. I had a chunk of money saved, and I was going to open up my own studio then. I was like maybe 19. I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to open up my own place. I'm going to do it. So I went to look at a couple of storefronts, and I was like, I don't want to lose money. I don't want to lose this money that I saved. I was kind of like, it was my cushion. I didn't want to take the risk. And I was like, what if I lose it all? And I was like, I'm not going to do this. Like, now when I look back on it, I'm like, you're a moron, because if you would have taken that chance then, I ended up doing it anyway at a later point when I couldn't take that risk. So I was better off taking the risk then, because I was still living home with my mom, So I could have taken a risk. I didn't have to worry about bills or anything like that. So it's like now, and it's so funny how life always comes around. So that's what I'm saying. Take that risk now while you have the opportunity. Because one of the things I wish I would have did early on in my 20s was travel more. Maybe try to move. One of the things I love what I do, but I want to be more remote because I would love to move. I hate the cold, man. I'm done with New York. I want to move to like Florida, California. Like I want to be out of New York. So hopefully within the next couple of years I can actually leave New York. But I would have liked to have tried to move down somewhere else and tried to make a living somewhere else. Then it's just at the time I was making money. I liked what I did, and I was like, I'm happy right now. I'll just keep doing it. And then time passes. Time passes no matter what. So take the risks when you can, because time is going to pass anyway. So just do it. Take the risk. Don't think twice. And going back to Walt Disney again, that guy took so many risks, and look at the name that he left. He's not even here. I think he died in the 70s. It's 2016, and Walt Disney's, $1 billion company, and he's not even here. You know what I mean? So you got to take that risk.
Do you have any other books to recommend other than Walt Disney's book?
Yeah, actually, it's funny. As a kid, I hated reading books. I hated it, especially when the teachers used to make you read all these corny books in school. I hated it. I've read more books in my late 20s, especially that I've become an entrepreneur, than I've ever in my life. I mean, anything by Grant Cardone is really good, teach you how to sell. I recently just bought Steve Jobs' book. I didn't get a chance to read that yet, but I'm excited to read that. It's really good.
I really like that. Yeah. If you liked, I haven't read Walt Disney's, but based on the thing that you've been saying, you're going to love Steve Jobs. Like, it's really good.
I think one of the most eye-opening books for me was Rich Dad, Poor Dad.
Yeah. Okay. Now I got to ask you, that reminded me, have you read Arnold Schwarzenegger's biography?
Oh, I've read like 100 times.
Yeah.
That
totally
big encyclopedia book, man. I tore that thing apart, man. But yeah, I've read his autobiographies, all of them. Anything with Arnold, I know all about it.
Rich Dad, Poor Dad, also very good book.
That book definitely changed my life, because that's the first book that got me thinking about making money not by exchanging time.
Enjoyed this episode of New York Muscle Radio? Make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review, and be sure to follow us on Facebook, New York Muscle Radio.